So, hello and welcome to our tech talk Beyond VDA 50/50, Mastering the Challenge of Managing Diverse AMR Fleets. Since the publication of the first version of VDA 50/50, software and hardware providers in the field of mobile robotics have been intensively working on the topic of mixed or heterogeneous fleets. And this is also increasingly becoming a focus for users. So I'm delighted to hear different experiences and perspectives on that topic in today's Tech Talk. And therefore, I would like to welcome our four speakers. First of all, Professor Dr. Tobias Bornemann, Senior Product Manager at Continental. Hello, Tobias. We have Dr. Alexander Hüttenbrink, Founder and Managing Director of KINEXON. Hello.
Hello.
Manuel Flubacher is a Business Development Manager, Middle East and Europe at SAP.
Hi.
And last but not least, Georgios Nikiforos, Head of Plant Logistics Düsseldorf and Outbound Logistics at Mercedes-Benz. Welcome to you.
Thank you. Hello.
So, Georgios, my first question goes to you. Please take us on a brief tour through, of your logistics. How are you organized with AGVs, AMRs, and why did you decide for this concept?
Yes, thank you, Juliane, for this question. So we are currently in the process of massively setting up an automated production supply system. There are currently 36 vehicles from 2 manufacturers in use. And this number will double till end of this year. And next year, there will be another huge increase in the number of these kind of vehicles. We also have ideas for the outdoor area, for which we are looking for an innovative and courageous manufacturer. And the AGVs are controlled partly by a PLC and partly by a modern control system with VDA 50/50 standard. So the choice of AGV manufacturer was limited due to our very specific requirements regarding the size and load capacity of the AGVs. Height, for example, only 240 millimeter and loads up to 1.5 tons. So this is more or less the actual picture of our concept in our plant.
Thank you. So Tobias, from a vehicle manufacturer's perspective or point of view, what specific challenges arise when vehicles from different manufacturers are brought together in one fleet?
From my side also, hello first. Yeah, definitely the challenge is that different mobile robots have different operating and also communication software, and they are also different in their behavior, let's say, how they drive, how they act, how they generate, and how they process, for example, also order updates, being precise, for example, with the movement of the mobile robots, of the drive behavior. Some mobile robots, for example, block ways in between points. For example, our robot is, for example, capable to give, for example, a signal already before we go to a dedicated defined point and can free this path then already earlier, yeah, and that's exactly the point. So we do not want to narrow down the capabilities and also opportunities of, let's call them, high intelligence, so with a high autonomy mobile robots down to the limitations of mobile robots which do not have the capability. So summing this up, I definitely also come to the result that we need a central control instance with an open software architecture where all these different vehicles can be brought under one head with a common standard. And there we are directly also at the VDA 50/50.
So that's the hardware side. Let's take a look to the software side. So what are the challenges from your point of view, Alexander?
Yeah, so I might explain that a bit from the customer perspective, what challenges we see there and what challenges that also translates to the software. So first of all, usually there's, as we heard, there's no one size fits all. There are different types of robots for usually different types of use cases. And there are coming a couple of implications with that. The first is obviously that you have higher integration complexity. Different robots can do different stuff. You have individual protocols and capabilities. That's usually for a customer a problem, or can be a problem. The second thing is obviously the interoperability between them. So especially if you're not working with standards like the VDA 5050, having heterogeneous fleets and robots is usually always an interoperability thing that you have to keep in mind. This is surely one thing that is true. Once you have managed that, then of course, if you want to scale, usually scalability always comes to standardization. So here standardization is important, and for instance, that is true for the communication between the robots and a fleet management system. That helps a lot for scaling once you want to scale, right? And of course, like still maintenance support, different vendors, different robots, having a lot of different heterogeneous different robots in one plant. Means that you have different maintenance cycles, different maintenance contracts, and so on. That's also adding some complexity and challenge. And of course, you need to have to train the people on different systems. So there are a couple of challenges, but when you have one software that comes, reduces a lot of these complexities and issues that I have just mentioned. But this is more from a, fleet management and customer perspective when it comes to the challenge that needs to be addressed.
Thank you. So the next question is for you, dear participants. A small survey will now appear in the chat, and we would like to know from you HEVs and AMRs from different manufacturers, fleet management software from another provider, and the connection to an ERP system, for instance. From your point of view, is that far too complex and time-consuming, interesting but not currently required, very important in the future, or already in use in your company? So give us a little feedback in the chat. So let's see. Okay, most of our participants think it's important in the future. Do you want, or can you just give a little comment on that result? Maybe Manuel, you?
Yeah, I mean, it's not that, to be honest, it's not that surprising because I push the same button. So, but the point is, it is the importance is there for all these points. We need to develop, to evolve, and go into areas where we can bring transparency and automation, of course.
Other comments?
Yeah, I would say it's a rather, more one comment from my side. I mean, we just engaged in that a couple of years ago, and a couple of years in industrial space is just at the beginning, right? So usually this transformation happens not in days, it happens in weeks, years, and sometimes decades. So totally understandable. We see the first mover here. Interestingly, a lot of also big companies are first movers, but yeah, I would have expected that. It's also what the numbers say. It's also what the size of the suppliers, right? There are no Googles and Amazons involved so far in that on the fleet management side, and it's a smaller but fast-growing market, I would say.
Thank you. So Alexander, just the next question for you. Which customers are opting for a diverse fleet? At KINEXON.
Yes. Yeah. So I think when you look at the mobile robots will really transform logistics, but they do this not overnight. They will do it over years and maybe a decade or so. So that means if you have the strategy, you have to be very thoughtful about selecting the right architecture and selecting the right setup, right? Because it will last for years what you decide now on your architecture, on your software, on your whole setup. So I think the companies that really take this serious and transform their material flow from manual operated more to automated operations, they will think a lot about what is the ideal setup that is future-proof also, that is the best to scale, whatever. So, and here are a couple of very, let's say, reasons why companies do that, and at least our customers we have to do with. They look first of all about flexibility, right? Choosing the best robot. They always wanted to choose the best robot for their needs. Then they want to scale that, and usually, you know, scalability is very important once it works, because they not just want to play around; they really want to change the way how do their material flow. And I mentioned the future-proofness, right? We will see a lot of new technologies coming up in the next year, and here standardization. And the fleet manager that has speaks and standard helps a lot to integrate much quicker new technologies that will arise on the robot side, for instance, right? You keep one system constant, but on the others you can implement very quickly than the other new technologies that are coming up. The second thing we see also data consolidation. If you have your data in silos on the different systems, on the different robots, and you don't have one data silo. It's a lot about decision making and having, even if you just have two or three types of robots and fleets, you might be interested in analyzing everything and compare it and benchmark it. So here a lot of the data consolidation plays an important role for our customers. They're very interested in then benchmarking, analyzing, and optimizing their fleet. That is obviously helpful. And of course, you know, the training of the people, having not just many middlewares, many software, it's easier. We have customers, they have over different plans, different robots, but they have one software. And they get trained on one software, and that's very helpful then for them to simplify the training and the people that work with these systems.
Thank you. So again, Tobias, to you, the hardware part. What experiences do you have had so far with data exchange with other manufacturers or different or even software providers so far, and even beside VDA 50/50? Just give us a little insight.
Yeah, definitely. And this is a very important perspective. Of course, we cannot have an eye on just the robot isolated. We have to communicate in fleets and also beyond the fleet of the own manufacturer. Maybe just sketching an overview about the different approaches which are currently ongoing. Of course, we have the VDA 50/50 derived and also developed continuously out of the German automotive industry. That's clear. A more parallel development approach, I would say, is the AMR Interoperability standard. Out of the US, a non-profit organization called Mass Robotics is currently working on this, also in a working group with mobile robot manufacturers, but also a complementary development approach, the ROS, so Robot Operating System, also quite popular, which has also an interface with the ROS bridge protocols to the VDA 50/50 and also supports our standard. This just as an overview that many different approaches are currently ongoing. Yeah? I want to detail the VDA 50/50. Here we definitely have to mention that the individual mobile robots do not communicate with each other directly on system level. Yeah, that's a very important point to understand. The communication is on a central base via the control system, so the Fleet Master control system. So we have two entities in this context, and that's exactly the point. Yeah? So we need with the VDA 50/50 to define a standardized interface for the mobile robot communication, which enables all manufacturers to communicate, let's say, in the same language. That's a very important point, yeah, to enable all of them on a defined standard that they are capable to communicate with each other. And that's exactly then also the point to define this standard. It's always easy to say, but of course, standard parameters are defined in the communication. I want to become very precise. For example, the coordinates of the last known position, then the order fulfillment of the individual robots, just to name some parameters of them. They were brought back from the robots then to the central system. And this central system homogenizes then the individual data and derives out of this then the individual actions. This is a short sketch about the communication structure between individual mobile robots interacting in a fleet, communicating via central control system. Just as an overview.
Thank you. So Manuel, now we have the fleet, we have the fleet manager, and we have an ERP system, most of the cases from SAP. So what is your role in that whole context? And have you already had contact with VDA 5050 at SAP?
Well, okay, you're targeting into ERP area, but what there is important to say is that we are more than ERP. We are talking about the EWM, the MES, so that means warehousing and production solutions. We are binding here not only via API, but above all via the integrated material flow control, of course, of the EWM, the MFS, or via an order interface, IDOC, RFC, web service, to fleets and robots for years. So we know a thing or two about this, and it's very important to us. We use these in warehousing and production solutions to control complex processes in production and logistics end to end. And therefore, using these fleets as an executive means that is for us essentially a resource like an employee, forklift, etc., that we can control. The main, from our perspective, the main goal of many customers is cost optimization and improved service at the same time. This can be driven by many measures, of course, but the most important thing is to achieve the goal of automation and transparency. And in order to be able to use automation in a targeted manner, you need a system that takes over the comprehensive orchestration of material flow and plans every movement. That is what our systems do at, like I said, EWM. And so that brings it all together. I mean, I cannot, to your question regarding the VDA, I cannot exactly point out when it was first mentioned in project, as we do not manage every and also not implement every project ourselves. But I think it plays a huge role, and we've seen it coming up quite a few times, I would say, of course.
Thank you. Georgios, what impact does the diversity of a fleet have on ongoing operations and, for example, maintenance? Alexander already mentioned that in his answer.
Good question. It's sure diverse manufacturers means diverse components, diverse training concepts for maintenance, and much more, and therefore, of course, greater complexity throughout the entire system. I can make another example of the storage of spare parts becomes more extensive and cost intensive. So the fact that different control systems are or can be used is also a challenge for ongoing operations. These increase the training effort for employees. So all in all, increased complexity with higher costs is the impact of diversity for operations and maintenance, of course.
Thank you. Once again, just a little hint, if you have questions, please use the chat, write your questions there, and we will answer them in the end of the talk. So Tobias, next question to you. So have you already have experience with mixed fleets in customer projects, and yeah, what experience are that, and what hints do you have for interested companies?
Yeah, definitely. I can share our experiences. So first of all, we have to ask ourselves, how would the world look like without a common standard? Yeah? And we know this out of history, very complex launches of individual mobile robot fleet systems, and also the interoperability was quite poor and made big challenges. Yeah, and that's exactly the point. And also with the VDA 50/50 standard, it's important to have an open dialogue, just to sit on a table together with the customer, with the user in the end. Yeah. Then also with the mobile robot manufacturer, this is then mainly our position, and then with a reliable fleet master control provider. Yeah. To come to the situation, to have an eye and a clear structure on a sustainable mobile robot strategy, I would call it. Yeah. Really to have an eye really at specific use cases, to make their detailed analysis and enabling individual robots then also with their degrees of freedom, I would call it, and also with the individual capabilities. And also with these individual capabilities, what is this mainly? This is, of course, if we talk about intra-logistical transport activities, about the level of autonomy. Yeah. For example, our AMR from Continental can plan its routes individually, completely individually means in this context we just set individual points. We have individual paths in our main control system, and then the robot can just act accordingly to these points in the overarching fleet master control. But also other manufacturers on the market are more bounded to dedicated lanes. Everything has to blend, absolutely static upfront, low flexibility level, and this is then in the operation very cumbersome. Yeah? And that's exactly the point with this common standard, with the VDA 50/50 in this context. Also the customers, and that's in the end the important point, have the maximum flexibility also later, because they can react on new challenges. We always talk about dynamic shop floors, and they can also use the latest technologies, not based on a decision maybe decades ago. And that's exactly the point. We can react and also plan there for a sustainable mobile robot application continuously.
So Alexander, do you agree to that, and do you also have hints for customers from the software perspective?
Yeah, agree to that, and I think we have seen it also in the poll that we are just at the beginning. And I mean, this year KINEXON was doing the VDMA mashup, where we with our one fleet manager controlled and steered the 9 different AMR brands, very different types of AMRs. This was more a showcase, right? So far, we don't have any customers that have 9 different robots in the same shop floor. We do have one that has 2 different already, but this is changing now. What we do have, for instance, and this is more already today, is we have a customer that has different plans, and for each different plans, he has already different types of robots. So not on the same shop floor, but in the same company, but they only have one fleet manager. That is, I would say, this is 90% of the cases today. But we see more and more customers that tell us already next year, 24, in the same shop floor, in the same area, there's coming a new AMR, and most likely it's not the same vendor than we had today. So we see we have different experiences. One is more, it's doable within a 20 by 20 or 20 by 30 meter. You can steer different types of robot of different vendors, and the other parts is coming more and more. Today it's more diverse across the different plants in different areas, but we see more also in the same area where they operate. And hints and tips, if I recall it from our projects, of course, I mean, when you're a customer, you need to acknowledge it's a change in how you operate. So change management is important for people, right? Just embrace it as, prepare the organization for the change and the disruption here. That is important about the people. Of course, understand you need the requirements upfront, ideally. Know what functionalities, what workflows you need, what workflows you want to automate. And of course, vendor selection is important. Choose AMRs, manufacturers that are open for the standard, that are not closed shop people, open-minded, if you will, open supporting the open standards. That is surely not a move you will regret in the future. And of course, I mean, it's all about also the people, training the staff that comes with the change management, and think about how you support it. So one is implementing it, like with any system, but how do you maintain and support that system? And that is also a thing you should keep in mind also when you start that project.
Thank you. So we have different parties in a project, and that's not that easy. Not only for the vehicle communication or the software communication, but also for the project communication. So Georgios, how did you set up the communication and the whole project handling with all the partners to get this done? Maybe and also positive or negative aspects of that.
I think it's a big challenge for sure. I'm sure that we need all parties involved in such big projects. So, for example, the operator, the maintenance guys, the assembly guys, the IT guys. And we had regular meetings in which the current planning status was discussed. And for sure, as always in life, you quickly realize that each area has different interests, and bridging these under one roof is of course a challenge, but we need to do that. So one big point was, for example, maintenance, which only considers an operator concept. If a vehicle is supplied in accordance with the Integra standard, this leads to many rounds of coordination, special approval lists, increased costs due to Integra components, and much more. So again, I come back to that, what I said in the beginning. I think communication, open communication, regular meetings with all involved parties are a very big key to have success in such kind of projects.
Thank you. Manuel, so again, from the next level, the next software level, so what is necessary to get projects like a diverse fleet to be implemented at all? What experiences do you have with connected fleet managers?
Yeah, again, the key feature of an SAP EWM, for example, is the unparalleled ERP integration, the holistic and at the same time flexible range of functions and the possibilities for seamless technology integration enabled the coverage of a classic warehouse management processes, as well as process optimization and the use of supporting technologies. And that means we have systems in place that orchestrate, again, complex processes, and we know exactly what needs to happen and when it does need to happen. So accordingly, we have the opportunity to orchestrate these movements and requirements, of course, so that in the end, underlying systems can carry this out. And the prerequisite for connecting fleet management systems are suitable integration interfaces that can exchange with the sub EWM. Therefore, we offer standardized interfaces such as web services or interfaces based on EDI. A common data format such as the XML or JSON is very important here. Using standardized fleet management platform offers great advantages in reducing the complexity of such interfaces. Regarding experiences, we have had very good experiences, especially with the KINEXON, for example.
Can you just tell us more about it? Maybe you can give an insight
about the examples from KINEXON?
Maybe, if it's possible.
There we do have still ongoing, so I can't talk much about it. I can tell the experiences are quite good.
Okay,
tricky one, honestly.
Then another question. So what about unforeseen situations, like, I don't know, delivery stops, order peaks or breakdowns? I mean, that obviously changes the whole material flow in a plant. So how is the communication there between, for example, SAP and a fleet manager?
Yeah, sure. I mean, risk management plays a huge role in our projects, and if we are able to monitor the project. So this means we have various analysis options to identify and solve risks. As an example, EWM sees when orders have not been executed well, and we report and check them accordingly. So throughout orchestration, we can know exactly when something is different, and our systems report the interruptions. But I mean, we could also monitor the status of the robot, which solutions such as asset performance, etc. But that is asset management performance solutions. That's a completely different story again. But yes, for us, this is very important, and we are also quite deep into it.
Thank you. So, Georgios, from a user's point of view, how do you identify and minimize risks associated with different manufacturers in a large fleet?
That's a very, very good question. So for sure, having just one manufacturer in-house simplifies many things. Yes, it's obvious, but also brings with it a kind of monopoly position, and therefore possibly a higher cost and dependencies. So considering the advantages and disadvantages is, from my point of view, very essential. So you have to decide use case by use case, what do you want to achieve and what is the best partner. So the general advice is to identify, to recognize, and to minimize the risks. We do this, for example, by ensuring the dialogue with our partner plants and learning from each other.
Okay. Alexander and Tobias, the next question is for both of you. Do you have hints or tips for companies that want to expand their fleets with maybe different manufacturers? Yeah. What are your recommendations for that? Alexander, I'll start with you.
I was mentioning a couple of the recommendations before. I think the first is, of course, look at your requirements first, right? If you don't need different fleets, if you don't need different vendors, if you have very small projects, maybe you don't need it. But most of the customers we have, and most people really, they want to scale. And if you want to scale them and have a lot of AMRs, it's about the selection of your partners. So as I said in the beginning, look for the vendors that do support the standards, that they're not blocking it, they're embracing it, and they're always, where you have the feeling that they are also up to speed when it comes to the new advancements in the standard. I think that is always good. Normally, these vendors, they have the in-house capabilities you want as a customer. They are, up to date to what's possible. So I think the vendor selection and the partner selection is pretty important as for maybe all projects, but especially here. Then, as I mentioned, the maintenance and support, we're talking usually about a system that needs to run, or we have a lot of customers with production critical. So when that AMR fleet is not running, it's not funny, and they're there. So it's really 99.999% availability. So in that regard, think also about not only the best technology, but also the capabilities to do the service and support. Do they have 24/7 support? Do they have the skilled and trained second, third level support people? We see that a lot, especially in automotive, but in other areas as well, and other sectors. It's not just the implementation first, it's then the maintenance and keeping the system up and running, because it's a system that should automate and not make you headaches and manual work. Yeah, I think that is very important. And again, internally as a customer, I mentioned the change management, but also preparing the staff, the workforce, that there's a new system, a new way of doing material transport is certainly something you should have in mind as a responsible person for these kind of projects.
Mm-hmm. Tobias?
Yeah, maybe from my side also some points to add. So I'm fully with you, Alexander. So we're talking also here again about standardization to enable an interoperability. That's the first important point. As I already said in the past, there was an initial decision necessary, then the individual systems had to be separated also completely locally, and so also the whole system was a kind of patchwork, I would say, yeah. And that's exactly the point with this VDA 50/50 approach, also to use this standard then in operation. We create this interoperability, and also that's a very important point from my side. It should be usable and consumable also then from the end user, respectively customer. For example, if new areas should be included into the whole system, it should be easily possible, for example, with a mapping tool in the Fleet Master Control, for example, really with a drag and drop as we are used to out of the consumer industry, also for setting new routes. Yeah, this should also be easily possible, and that's exactly the point. So I could proceed my lists regarding requirements, but all these points are easily necessary then if we have a very strong partner, and in collaboration. This is my important point, between end user, mobile robot manufacturer, and then also Fleet Master Control provider. That's an important point, to come together, work with tools, work with interfaces which are easy to access and also easy to handle, and intuitively. That's the important point.
Thank you. So far to my questions. Now it's up to you, dear participants, to ask your questions, and you already did this in the chat. If you have more questions, please write them in the chat, and yeah, let's take a look. Just have to get back a bit. So the question for the next VDA 50/50 version was already answered in the chat. Here we have a question for Georgios. You said you have two different AGVs. Do they transport the same things, or is each AGV for a separate process? For example, the one for big parts, the other for small parts. If they transport the same things, who decides which AGV should transport?
Yes, thanks for the question. No, they're responsible, or they transport different items, different parts. So it's defined from the beginning that this kind of AGV will transport this kind of parts, and the other AGV the other parts. And the reason are often the size or the weight of the parts.
Thank you. Then there is no speaker, but I think maybe we can, the question is for all of you. If you have an HEV supplier A and HEV supplier B, the fleet management supplier C, who should the customer call when the HEV system is blocked?
That's a very good question, and it's always we do also in our other areas that we do this have a similar, let's say, challenge, a platform where all the different types of system put their data in, and then there's some system is third-party system is not delivering the data. What do you do then, right? It's a similar like this question. When an AMR is not performing, what is it? Is it a fleet management system or is it the robot itself? It's a bit similar if you would do it if you have one system. Of course, you will look first, and there are today more and more monitoring tools. Also at the KINEXON Fleet Manager, we have some monitoring tools that help you very quickly to assess, is it potentially a problem of the robot or is it potentially a problem of the Fleet Manager? If that's not working in a let's say in the first level, then you need to call usually, and that's why I said about service and maintenance. Then you need to call the next level, which is most likely an expert that can look deeper into the logs, whether it was a problem at the fleet manager or the AMR. But keep in mind, if you would have it from one supplier, the software and the AGV, that supplier would at that step would do the similar stuff. He would also look, was it all my fleet management software that produced that problem, or was it rather the robot? So and what is coming up here is, and we see it also in the ecosystem, there might be more and more system integrators coming up that be the one that is controlling everything and is taking care of this stuff towards the customer. So the customer is just calling then the system integrator, like for other automation projects where you have this system integrator and you call him if one part of the automation system is not working. So far, it's mostly in our experience, they call us, and if they monitor, if you see it looks like the robot, they call the robot manufacturer. And then you start look deeper.
Maybe one point from the robot manufacturer side also, and this is also our approach and also our intention to develop, of course, products which are then also easy to handle, and also, let's say, training of the operational stuff at the customer is, of course, also included, and not for each and every mistake. So the manufacturer or the fleet master control stuff has to be called, because it can also be solved by him or herself then directly. So this support also with enabling the individual knowledge then in the organizations is possible. But nevertheless, of course, if it's a bigger thing and if it's a more complex issue, then of course the support is then also directly given from our execution teams directly at the customers.
Okay, thank you. So the next question is for you, Alexander. I'm not quite sure if I understand it right. Is it possible to integrate by ourselves a mobile robot manufacturer that you don't support yet?
Yeah, we have onboarding documents. So like we have already a couple of AMR manufacturers, more than 10, that can work with our system. If there's a new one, we have onboarding materials on the VDA 5050 standard. So if that manufacturer can speak, if you will, that protocol, that should work easily. But normally, when it's really in a running customer system, there will be a contact needed with our persons, with our people, to make sure that it's working. And normally you're testing it, and sometimes you find stuff that is maybe not covered by the VDA 5050, and then of course you need support. But if you speak, let's say, the standard, and if you can work against it, then is the high probability that it's very easy to integrate. For instance, as I said, we have these onboarding documents and API definitions that help these manufacturers very quickly to integrate with the fleet manager. But again, that's why the standard is there, and it's getting better and better. So if you speak the standard, then it's a very high probability that it works quickly.
The next question, I think, is also for you, Alexander and Tobias. It's a technical question about the implementation. Is it possible to have several AMRs sharing a same edge at the same time of the navigation graph?
Yeah, I can answer this, but or Tobias, would you like? Maybe I answered first and you correct it if needed. Technically it would be possible, but it doesn't make too much sense because we usually release areas, so clear the area or not clear the area for another AMR. So if it's blocked by another AMR, and that is usually done by these edges and nodes. So we really try to keep the flow and that an AMR is not getting into any traffic problems or is obstructing any others. So technically it would be possible, but usually we use it the other way around. So we block an edge or a node or something that if there's another AMR, so we try to use that to avoid that they meet at the same path or in the same aisle, so that it's not blocking, right? So technically yes, but normally we shouldn't do it.
Yeah, maybe to add something from my side, of course, for example, we also developed together with KINEXON the point before we enter the point that we free this path then already to become there more, let's say, smoother and or also a more increase the productivity at all to free the individual paths than earlier. So this is definitely possible, yeah, before we enter this points, but in general, and that's correctly explained by Alexander, also due to safety reasons, then to block the individual paths, not to get into traffic jams, and maybe also not situations where the goods are too close to each other, then maybe on top, and the individual robots could maybe drive into each other.
Thank you. How do you make sure that all the Topos are compatible? I'm not quite sure if it is a software topic or hardware.
Can be both. Depends on the topic, right? So, but let's assume the topper fits on the mechanically it fits. Then it's more a software problem, right? So, but maybe I don't know if Tobias, you want to tell something about it? It's more like on the robot. But normally we also might have interference here with our system to trigger something on that topper. But that so far, and correct me if I'm wrong, is then done mostly individually. But maybe I don't get the question correctly. What it's, whether it's what it means with fits. Doesn't maybe mechanically, but also maybe from the functionality, and then it's more individual thing mostly. I think their VDA 5050 has commands in triggering that, but there might be toppers that have additional features that are not covered by the standard, and then you need to do it individually. And by the way, for instance, our software can do that easily, right? So I think we have later on also a question on what do you do with stuff that is non-standard. There's always the ability, at least in our fleet manager, to do stuff on top. But let's say if you have a command that is covered by VDA 5050, you should do it like the VDA 5050 is defining it. But if you have a special feature, special functionality, you can do that on top. But when it's something that's defined by the standard, we use always the standard and be compliant with the standard. But it's always possible to extend, if you will, the standard with a command. That's not a problem. That's usually done very easily on the software side.
That's exactly the next question, how to handle situations that are not covered in VDA 5050, especially loading and unloading.
Yeah, true. Yeah, that's a bit what I said, basically. You can build on top of the standard, extend the standard pretty easily with nice, if you will, scripting type of scripting that you give commands and exchange commands with the system. So that is normal, I would say, that is happening because the VDA 5050 standard is not covering every corner case and everything and every functionality that is out there. Maybe that's not needed, but it's more like an on-top thing, and it's possible to do that. And it's done mostly individually, but in the fleet manager that is triggering it then.
Okay. Next question is for you, Manuel. what are typical contact points between a fleet management system and SAP EWM? You're muted.
Like the old guy in the room. From a sub's perspective, we are initially manufacturer agnostic. And in that sense, all systems can be connected with appropriate consultants. And as there will always be a need for an EWM or a manufacturing solution, it's exactly what we offer. And in the spirit of a clean core, it's a direct connection with our warehouse robotics solution, and on the other hand, a direct one. But again, within the sense that we had quite a few times here, we're trying to be open.
Thank you. So that was the last question in the chat. Last chance to ask your questions for our speakers. Again, a question for unexpected situations, like a blocked drop station. Can the vehicle update the order or communicate this information? Maybe Tobias, and can you answer? Also muted. Yes.
Yeah, so the vehicle can definitely get the update. Of course, with our AMRs, we are also capable not to get blocked like AGVs. So we define our individual paths and then come back as soon as possible then to the individual path. But of course, also the AGVs can get this information, and as soon as the obstacle is then away, of course, the path can be free afterwards and used again.
Okay, so I have two more questions, and I think because of the time, then we stop. Georgios, can you elaborate? A bit more on the maintenance part, training and spare parts.
Yes, we have defined with each AGV company a training concept and a maintenance concept. And in this year, we are collecting experience regarding this issue, and it's getting better and better. And we have to learn how to handle maintenance with these AGVs. So we can talk separately about that if it's if this is the question. But this is the actual status, yeah.
Thank you. Does it make sense to localize and control conventional forklift trucks with drivers together with AGVs and AMRs via the same fleet manager during the transformation? I think, Alexander, this question is for you.
Yes, I would say yes. I mean, of course, the better, the more information you have of all these, let's say, machines, manual or automated operated in the system would be best. That's why, we are coming, or we have also solutions where we track assets and objects, pallets, materials, whatever in the warehouse in real time. And that's exactly what we do is tracking not only the assets, but also then the forklifts for integrating that into the traffic management, for instance, so that we're not blocking each other or the AMRs. And we are in ongoing discussions with customers doing that, so tracking, and we have done it also in the past, tracking the manual operated forklifts, for instance, to optimize the flow, to optimize the order and traffic management. So that makes totally sense. And it makes sense because, as I said, in the transformation so far, I would say 95 or 99% of the material handling so far is still done manually, right? I don't know, Georgios, how you see that, but there's still a lot of things is done manually. So far, of course, for the next years, you see it's coming quickly, but it's also in 1 or 2 or 3 years, we will see maybe it's 50-50 then, right? So there must be a solution for that, for that period.
It's the next step for sure, Alexander, as you said. I think we have to do that. We have to go in this direction.
Okay. Thank you very much. So that concludes our tech talk. Thank you, Manuel, Alexander, Tobias, and Georgios for your insights. And of course, thank you for joining us in this tech talk, dear participants. If you would like to see a diverse fleet in a test environment, I recommend you the AGV Mesh app, which takes part at the Test Camp Intralogistics on April the 10th and 11th in 2024. Please save this date and find more information on testcamp-intralogistics.com. Thank you very much and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.